Thanks for having me, Pablo. And thank you, Norm, also for both of you for inviting me and both of us. I couldn't be happier to be here. So let's jump right into it.
Okay, great. So apparently you came by train to Prague.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I'm not a big. I like the idea of being in an airplane, but I tend to avoid it whenever I possibly can. Yes, we came here we took one train from Paris to Berlin, where we were doing a little work preparing a film that we're going to be shooting in January, and then we took another train from Berlin to Prague. What do you think of it? He's not as accustomed as I am to train travel. We did make a film on a train once, years ago. We shot a film together in India, and we spent probably a month living on the train.
And we spent a lot of time riding around Indian trains as well, just to kind of get the experience of doing that. So, but as far as riding the train, I love the trains of Europe. They're really wonderful. The overnight trains, I'm not so sure about. You know, they're not as comfortable as sleeping in a nice bed, so that would be my comment. But I do love the train system.
So a mixed review from Bob, but for me, a pretty strong endorsement.
Yeah, that's surprising because we always associate you with these romantic adventures, and just a little bit of your background. Because of the characters in your films, we're wondering, were you also prodigious as a child? Were you leading these adventures? Were you directing plays, making movies?
Well, I did do a lot of. I made little short films when I was a kid, and I wrote plays. But you know, in a way, without me quite realizing, often the films that I've made have been sort of me making characters who live out the fantasies I had as a child more than the life I had as a child, even the problems that they have. You know, in particular, this last film called Moonrise Kingdom, it's inspired by things from my childhood, but it's sort of inspired by all the things that didn't happen to me as a young person.
Ivan, do you have a question?
Well, I would really want to involve immediately the issue of collaboration of Bob and Wes, because since we really didn't expect to have both of you here, so I'm wondering, since you're working from the very beginning, from the Bottle Rocket feature together, how much did you build that unique style together? What was Bob's part in it, and how, since you never really wrote this collaboration?
Yeah, should I start? Sure. Okay. Well, you know, an interesting thing is I didn't, when we made Bottle Rocket, that's a very, very long time ago, must be like 16 or 17 years ago or something like that. I really didn't know. I knew things about what I wanted in the frame and the sort of feeling of some lenses and things. I knew almost nothing about lighting, and I still don't know very much about lighting. You know, I still struggled. Bob is always teaching me about lighting, and we just shot some tests in the last couple of days in Berlin, and we did lighting of every variety just to discuss it again. It's the same principles that we were using, but I'm still trying to understand them. So I feel like our collaboration has been me learning a great deal about photography from Bob. And then in time, I've worked with other directors of photography on smaller projects, and it's kind of shown me, it's brought into focus particular strengths of Bob's. I mean, I feel Bob is one of the best camera operators alive. And when I see somebody else try a shot, and they can't do it, and I know, here's how Bob would do it, and it would be a much simpler matter if only Bob were here. That's a few thoughts about Bob. You take it from there.
Well, thank you for that. I think it goes back to when we initially met on Bottle Rocket, and we had our initial meeting, and we immediately kind of hit it off, and we're drawn to the same types of movies, and we discussed things visually, and we saw things so much the same way that it was kind of a natural collaboration. And I think over the years, because we do see things so similarly, it's easier for shoot Wes's movies because I can kind of anticipate what he might like, and sometimes I can even anticipate where he'll want to shoot something. And those of you familiar with his style know he's a very distinct look. And so, having been there through all his films, I can kind of know going into something, oh, I think this is how Wes would like it, and sometimes I'm wrong, but generally I think I'm pretty close to what he has envisioned. And we spend a great deal of time, and we're in pre-production right now, so we spend a great deal of time going to locations and talking about how he would like to see things, and so that when we arrive with the actors and the crew, we pretty much have a pretty good game plan so we can work very efficiently. So that's kind of how it works.
Now, you're very precise in terms of staging, you filling the shot, framing, and maybe stuffing and overstuffing it. I want to ask, aren't you afraid that sometimes you might even cross that border and it will be, for the audience, it will be too much and not related to the feelings? It will be going against the character's emotions?
Well, I think somewhere along the way, I feel like I've kind of made a decision. I started making films with a script that I had written with a friend, and it was, sort of set in places that we knew, and I had a kind of preconception of what it was going to be like, and we sort of designed a lot of things for it. But when we actually started shooting it, and I saw the dailies, it looked nothing like what I expected. This combination of decisions that we had made, when they were added together, was a surprise to me. And that happens with sort of every movie. The thing I've learned over time is, usually whatever combination I put together of my inspirations, when it's mixed, people could say, I can tell that's your movie. It just ends up, for some reason, being recognizable as me. And someone said, well, should I try to do something completely different? But I've kind of made a decision. These movies are like me, that's my personality. If I want the movies to be, if I want to feel as close to the movies as I do, and just follow my own inspiration, then I feel like I shouldn't fight what makes it mine, and so I sort of embrace it. And in terms of going too far with that, I feel my own movies are suited to having more ideas, and if I have an inspiration and something I think could make the scene more interesting, I usually try to just add it and expand it, and they're always evolving. That's more or less my thought about it.
And that actually makes them watch it more and more, over and over, and get more of your world.
Well, that would be the best case scenario. Yeah.
I really wanted to congratulate you on Moonrise Kingdom. It's a beautiful film, and I was very happy to see so many new elements of style, and directing-wise, photography-wise. There's basically a black and white sequence right on the roof, which is the blue, the saturated one. There is the change of aspect ratio and also lenses, I think. So can you tell us a bit more on how did you make those decisions? Are you going to maybe bring them further? Is there a chance you'll be doing a black and white film or something like that? And this is a question kind of for both of you.
Yeah. Well, there were several things we were doing differently on that film. One is we shot it on 16 millimeter, which I had not shot anything really on 16 millimeter since a short film before we made Bottle Rocket, and that was largely, there were several things along the way. We did a lot of tests and compared different film stocks, and we found a good, slow, fine 16 millimeter film stock that didn't, the grain was not hugely noticeable, and we liked the amount of grain, and we found some cameras, these Aton, they're called A-minimas, these little tiny Aton cameras that you hold, that you can't even put them on your shoulder. They're designed to be held like a video camera. You hold them underneath, and when you hand hold these A-minimas, they're at the eye level of a 12-year-old. And I felt like the movie was going to be shot looking down at children, and we had lots of scenes with people of shorter stature, and we used these cameras all the time. We got 5 of them, and we tried to keep them all loaded, and we tried to make it where when one finished, you handed it off and you got a new one that was already loaded and ready to go. It didn't usually there was a technical problem with one of them or the other, and it wasn't quite as fluid as we wanted it to be. But that was a big part of it. The scene you talk about near the end of the movie that goes into it goes into black and white. We took out all the color and then we just put it in blue, and that was something that we really determined late in the process when we spent a lot of time. It's a movie that's made using old-fashioned methods generally, but the finishing is like every movie now, done digitally, and we spent a lot of time on that aspect of it, and that's, it's a nice added kind of creative phase of filmmaking. So do you want to add something?
I just want to add about the 16 millimeter. Part of the decision was also we were shooting in the woods through some pretty remote areas, and I don't know if you guys have shot out of 35, but you had a lot of cases, it's a lot of heavy equipment, we had to lug up and down hills, and I think some of the thought was to make the cameras more mobile and be able to just pick up a camera and run through the woods, and the 16 was really perfect for that. And as Wes mentioned, we did do a digital intermediate in the post-production, and with the digital tools that you have available to you today, you can, a lot of people were even surprised the film was 16 millimeter. I mean, I've gotten that comment quite a bit, and I'm a big champion of 16 millimeter, and I would encourage all of you, if you haven't shot it, to try it out, because it's a wonderful medium that is gradually being replaced by digital. So try out the 16, I love it.